guys, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of This Exists. I'm Meaty McCollum, and I'm here in someone's backyard to look at the B-600. Now, this came about right after the 35th Amendment was passed. This wonderfully blued Magnum revolver was issued to the former state of California, mostly for military use, but it's fallen out of favor for a number of reasons we'll get into. We don't know exactly how many of these were made, but given most ranges have an item spawner, you can pretty much get, an infinite number of these things. Just so many of them. So, hypothetically, that puts our number of, B-600s in the world, I would reckon somewhere in the trillions, honestly, because this is excessive. And I can keep pulling these out as many as I want, as long as I want. So this here is the B-600. It's a lot like a Nerf strong arm in a lot of ways. It's kind of this big, sort of proto-sci-fi futuristic, kind of cheap look. Super long trigger guard. Doesn't need to be that big. You got this top rail. It covers a decent amount of the weapon. Not the whole thing. We've got some sights. Sights aren't that bad. You got this bottom rail. We'll talk the bottom rail. Let's go ahead and open this up. And despite it taking, a really big cartridge, this is 600 Magnum bolt. We'll compare that to 50 Action Express real quick. So you can kind of get a vibe on just how big this thing is. But despite, taking such a big round, it actually does take a full 6 shots in the cylinder. And yes, the cylinder does need to be that big. Don't mean to point the gun at the camera, but you can see it fills that up pretty well. So when this was in production, there were about 3 rounds being produced for it. This is the jacketed hollow point. This is kind of your typical... This is the type of round you'd normally want to load into this. There was also an armor-piercing round, which is, more for if you needed to punch through sheet metal or a vehicle. But then there was also this. This is a glowing dart inside of a bullet casing. When you fire this off, this is like a sticky mine. This sticks into your target and then explodes. That would do a lot of damage to internal organs or soft tissue or anything else, honestly. It's an explosive. Because the idea was you could use this like a grenade launcher. Now, that's preposterous. This is, just a regular old revolver. It's kind of your sidearm. But that's why you'd also be able to load it and fire regular rounds out of it as well. So this could play, multiple utility roles. The issue is the MGL could play multiple utility roles already. 600 Magnum Bolt was just kind of an overkill round compared to 44 Magnum, even with this being, 600 Magnum Bolt, a truly massive round. This weapon kicks like a mule. So there's the solution that they came up with was the bottom rail. If you needed a more stable platform, what you could do is attach a foregrip, and then you hold it in 2 hands. The problem is now you have a revolver, a sidearm. That's a 2-handed platform. At that point, why wouldn't you use just a regular rifle or grenade launcher? It's too big for the role they intended to play with it. So, ultimately, the issue with the B-600 is this is just a lot of firepower, but with no real use. There aren't many municipalities that were looking to replace both an MGL and a revolver. It was frankly just easier to keep one of each, rather than trying to double dip with this weapon. This also weighs a whole lot more than just a regular 44 Magnum and a bunch of rounds. And 44 Magnum was already kind of overpowered for what people needed at that time. The other thing to keep in mind is whatever company produced this monstrosity, didn't really think of the more practical use of a 40mm grenade launcher. Sure, 40mm is a common form factor for explosive cartridges, but there were other uses. There was the X214 Steelbreaker round, which would be used kind of like a big high-power slug to tear holes into machinery or tanks or buildings. There were smoke grenades and the Freedom Party flashbang to kind of incapacitate a foe to make a hasty retreat or save lives. They were a utility. There were even flares designed for those launchers. The ammo for this weapon could only do explosions, and that was a problem. You know, the B-600 is really only a killing device, and with that in mind, there's no reason to use this over a conventional 44 Magnum, because that's more than enough firepower, it's much more portable, and you're not going to risk, arm damage trying to shoot the thing. But I think that'll be it for this video. As always, I am Meaty McCollum. I wrote a book on French firearms, I think. And I'll see you back here for another episode of This Exists for Some Reason. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.